Honestly, there must have been 20 couples doing this loop. And we were last. And our appointment came and went, came and went, came and went. And I don't know why we just kept getting bumped down the list, but ultimately it was just us in the waiting room at the end. And finally they called us through, so we went in, and without going into the details of what happened, the staff there told us there's no heartbeat. The baby's died at 9 weeks. It's what they call a miscarriage, insofar as there was nothing to suggest that there was anything wrong. There was no physical symptoms of a miscarriage. There was nothing. To all intents and purposes, you go in there believing that you're going to get amazing news and you're going to get this grainy black and white photo that you'll take away and that you'll share with friends, family, and anyone on social media. And I can still remember them giving us that news. It was uniquely devastating.
Welcome to Fairways and Feelings, the podcast where we take a step off the course and into the lives of the people who shape the game. I'm Daniel, and each episode I sit down with someone from the world of golf to talk about everything that happens off the course. The thoughts, the feelings, the messy middle bits. Today I'm joined by Michael McEwan. Michael is the editor of Bunkered, Scotland's biggest golf publication and one of the biggest golf media brands in the UK. He's spent more than 20 years writing about the game, interviewing some of the biggest names, hosting podcasts, shaping stories, and learning to somehow stay human in an industry that always has something to say. In this conversation, we talk about growing up in Orkney in Scotland, discovering writing at a young age, and how a kid writing football match reports on an old Apple Mac ended up building a career in golf journalism. But the heart of this episode is Michael's personal experiences with Miscarriage. He speaks openly about the losses he and his wife Jules went through, the fear that followed, and the impact that it had on his sleep, his mental health, and the way he moved through the world afterwards. There's also a moment in this conversation where Michael talks about something he only fully understood much later on. This is a conversation about writing, fatherhood, grief, hope, and the strange comfort that can come from hearing someone else say the thing that you thought you were carrying on your own. This episode is brought to you by Florio, golf's mental health movement. We're here to drive better mental health in and around golf. Part of that work is Healthy Minds Golf Club, our online mental fitness hub for golfers. It's where you'll find honest stories from people across the game, such as this one, along with simple guides and tools to help you handle life's ups and downs a bit better. And it's all for free. Have a look via the link in the show notes, but let's get on with it. Here's my conversation with Michael. So, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10, and why?
This is such a great question. I've heard you ask this other people, and I thought I knew what my answer was going to be, but now that you've asked me, I'm not really sure. I think honestly, I would say a 6.
Okay.
Because that's okay. That's better than average, and it's early in the morning. I'm not really, and never have been, a particular morning person. I feel like I do all my best work at night, particularly later at night. And so I'd like to think I get better as the day goes on, and then go to bed, reset, wake up. And as long as I'm not 4 or below, then I think we've got a pretty good baseline to start from. And with 6, there's room for improvement, right? So I'll go with a 6.
That's fair. Yeah, I get that. I definitely resonate with that as well. That as the day goes on, I'm the same. I'm not really a morning person. But Michael, it's 20 past 10. It's not that early.
You make a very good point. I'm on my 3rd coffee of the day. I'm a black coffee drinker, so I'm on my 3rd very strong coffee of the day. So Yeah, maybe 6 was just the sort of Scottish pessimist within me. Maybe it's a little bit better than that, but
No, that's fair.
without getting into football, there was football matches played last night, which may or may not be influencing
Oh,
my
okay.
mindset.
Okay. Then it is quite early. That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, you better believe it.
I think it's also I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning with my 2-year-old, so it's middle of the day for me.
Oh
Was
my goodness, it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it? But
yes.
it's funny. I heard my daughter shouting from her room this morning. I don't know what time of morning it was, but she was shouting, "Mummy, I need your help! I need your help!" And I thought, well, she said "mummy," so she clearly knows who she wants. So I just turned over and went back to sleep.
Wise decision. Might come back and bite you at some other point, but
Most likely, most likely.
6 is fair though. That's fair. And like you said, there's room for improvement, and you've noticed that, and yeah, intrigued to see what it ends up at the end of the day.
Let's aim for 10.
Exactly. All great. Well, thanks so much for joining, Michael. And I would love to start off just by getting to know you, really. And I'm always really intrigued to learn about my guests' childhood and what your upbringing was like, because I feel like obviously our upbringing, our childhood really shapes or can shape who we are further down the line. Um,
Absolutely.
I understand that you grew up in Orkney, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, I lived there until I was 12. My mum was born and raised in the islands. My dad's from Paisley, and they met after my mum moved to, excuse me, when she moved to Ayrshire.
Hmm.
And they'd both been married previously. My mum's first marriage ended. Her first husband sadly passed away
Mm.
when she was quite young, and she had my brother Martin. She then subsequently met my dad, whose own marriage had ended, and they made the decision to move back to Orkney. I've never, funnily enough, I've never actually asked them why, but they made the decision to move back. I've got another brother, I've got an older sister as well, and then I came along in 1984, and yeah, as I say, the first 12 years of my life were spent in Orkney, which was it's funny at the time when you're a kid, you're thinking, oh my God, I wish I lived like New York. I wish I lived in London, or I wish I lived in Glasgow closer to my football team. And you always wish to be somewhere other than where you are.
Right.
But as time goes on, I hear the islands calling to me over and over again. And we're actually
Yeah.
going back this year. We're going back in August. I've not been there for about 12 years. And I've been really keen to take my daughter back,
Mm.
but I want her to see it the way that I saw it. So she's got to see it before she's 12. She's 8, going on 9 now. And so the window is closing. We've done Disneyland in Paris the past few years. We've done Legoland in Denmark. We've been a few other places. So finally it's time to take her to Orkney and hope that she loves it in the same way that I love it. I've come to appreciate it even more. I've always loved it, but now I think I appreciate it even more than I ever did.
Yeah. Bit of a yeah. High. You've set the bar high after Legoland and Disneyland, though, haven't you? I don't know if Orkney's going to live up to a different
I
experience.
can't
Say it
see
that
it.
way.
There's no roller coasters. There's no theme parks. There's plenty of beaches,
Yeah.
but you put layers on when you go to the beaches in Orkney as opposed to take them off. So yeah, I just hope that she appreciates it for what it is. Either way, I'll make sure she has plenty of snacks and treats to hopefully influence her decisions.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be a valuable experience for you as well, though. Going back to where you were raised and being able to show her and your partner, like your childhood and what that was like. Any memorable
Definitely.
spots or whatever it might be. That'd be great. And you're going
Yeah, I
in.
totally agree.
Yeah.
I grew up in a street, and nobody believes this, but I grew up in a street where there were also 2 castles and a Norse cathedral.
Oh wow.
That was the street that I grew up on, and it was, I'm not going to say fairy tale stuff because I think that's overstating it a little bit, but it really, truly was a beautiful place to grow up.
Yeah.
It was so safe as well, and I think that imbued a sense of naivety and innocence. Like, we didn't lock doors.
No.
That wasn't something you needed to do. You would leave the house, you would pull the door closed behind you, but there was the latch was never set.
Mm.
Car doors were left unlocked. I'm interested to see if that's changed now,
Mm.
but at that time there was just a real sense of innocence and, yeah, naivety around living on the islands, which was nice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for the world. You know, big cities toughen you up, and
Yep.
there's no question about that, and life will beat you up and it'll teach you stuff along the way. But I really like the start that I had. I think it was a really nice and straightforward way to just learn about life and have a great childhood.
Yeah. And if we were to ask your parents what kind of kid you were, what were you like?
It's a very good question. I'm quite different to my siblings in the sense that, one, I'm a lot younger than them. So my siblings are 7, 10, and 19 years older than me. So I
Oh,
was
okay.
let's use the word surprise, I think. That's a nicer word, isn't it? So I'm quite different to them in terms of age, but also just in terms of personality. I'm the sporty one in the family.
Mhm.
One of my brothers is an extraordinary musician and he moved to America to pursue that passion. But none of them are really into sport in the same way that I am. I think I was definitely a very studious kid. I liked learning. I liked going to school. I liked spending time with my friends. I think, there wasn't really any rebellion or any, what's the word? There wasn't any issues until I hit my sort of late teens because I think I was quite afraid of things. I was quite scared of getting into trouble. I didn't want to upset anybody. And I don't know, I've always had this inbuilt kind of fear of consequences in a lot of
Okay.
ways. I'm a warrior. I mean, that is what I am by nature. And I can trace that back to being a kid. I can't trace that back to any one particular time or one particular thing, but I never got into trouble, I guess
Mhm.
is the point.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think I was a nice wee guy, but I don't know. It's probably a question for my parents, to be honest.
So you're making yourself sound really, really good as a kid here.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I am polishing the halo as we speak.
Exactly. Now, it's. Do you think that your siblings had anything to do with that? Kind of being the youngest one, being able to see them and the experiences that they maybe went through. I can't really resonate because I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother. You kind of, set the tone, I guess. But do you think that had anything to do with it?
Maybe to some extent. I mean, my oldest brother had moved out of home by the time I was born. I
Right.
think he
Okay.
moved out when he was 16, 17, and moved to another town in the islands where he became an apprentice baker, of all things.
Okay.
And my other brother, I mean, he was my hero. I looked up to him, through consequences that are far too complex to get into. We're not in touch anymore. And that is a shame. I guess there's stuff that I could have done differently, things that he could have done differently, but it's families, isn't it? These things happen. But growing up, yeah, he was certainly my hero. I can't say like I remember aspiring to try to be like him. I think my clearest memories are just trying to impress him and spend as much time as possible around him.
Mm.
He played guitar and plays it frankly better than anyone that I know.
Really?
But I never had the interest in playing guitar. I was so impressed by him doing it, and I just wanted to be around him when he was doing it. So there was that, and then my sister and we've become very close as the years have gone on. But at that age, I'm just the annoying little brother that she didn't anticipate having, and she was a teenager by the time I was going to school, and I think we all remember what it was like to be a teenager, and to have younger people around. You just wanted nothing to do with them. You wanted to be with the grown-ups. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess to answer your question directly, yeah, there was probably a little bit of sibling influence, but not a huge amount.
No. Fair enough. Yeah, no, I always just think it's interesting the impact of that siblings can have. Like I said, me being the oldest, I just find it's a different experience probably to what my brother faced growing up, and yeah, interested how it influences you.
I think what I would say is that my parents had figured it out by then, right? I
Right.
mean, I was number 4, so they probably they were probably as a team a really well-oiled machine and knew how to parent and knew how to raise a kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, as I look back, I've got nothing but fond memories of my childhood.
Mm.
It was, as I say, a great place to grow up. I had wonderful people around me. I had a great group of friends, and it's funny. It's Christmases that stand out, Danny. It's
Hmm.
I think of Orkney, and the things that really sort of crystallise quickest in my mind are Christmases because it was so magical up there. You had the Northern Lights, which has become everybody's favourite phenomenon, it feels
Yeah.
like, over the last 5 or 10 years. But up there, we called them the Merry Dancers. And I remember we'd go out at Christmas time, there would be snow on the ground, it would be so cold, but you would look up at the sky, and because there wasn't a huge amount of artificial light like there is in the city, the sky was just full of stars.
Mm.
And those Northern Lights Merry Dancers, you could see them twinkling, and at times you could hear them twinkling. You could see their movement, the shape of the auroras.
Wow.
And yeah, I remember vividly standing outside in my back garden, looking up at the sky with my dad and with my mum. And you can't buy those. Well, of course you can now buy those experiences. There are travel agents that are making a really, really good living from selling
Yeah.
that dream. But yeah, it was just, yeah, so special, so special.
And it's going back to what you said earlier on around, as a kid, you know, you wish you lived somewhere else, why can't I live in New York or something? It's probably now in hindsight that realize or, realize that you maybe took it for granted a little bit. And
Totally.
yeah, that's amazing.
Totally. I mean, New York's great. I've been to New York quite a few times now as an adult, and it's everything that I thought it would be when I was a
Mm.
kid. I've, one of my favorite cities in the world is London, and I've been fortunate, through my work to travel around the world and see the kind of places I didn't even know existed when I was a kid, and to have experiences that I couldn't have imagined of. But yeah, I think every time that I go somewhere new, that does always, I guess, maybe subconsciously reinforce my appreciation for where I grew up.
Yeah.
Orkney's a really, really special place. It's a cold place. there's not, it's not a great place if you're wanting to grow trees because there's none of them, but it's a special place, and I feel really privileged to have been brought up there.
Yeah. Lovely. I need to, it's Northern Lights aren't necessarily on my bucket list, but I feel like there's so much hype around them. I need to do it at some point, don't I? But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you mentioned passions earlier on, and you mentioned obviously your
Mm.
siblings had different passions to you, and yours was sport, seemingly from a young age. You've written about how writing was also from a fairly young age a passion of yours. When did you first realize I'm actually quite good at this?
I honestly, this is going to sound crazy. It was probably in like primary 3 or 4 where my daughter is now. And we would do creative writing. We would do, we'd be asked to write short stories and all that sort of stuff and really kind of stretch our imaginations. And yeah, if I look back, it was clearly part of the curriculum where teachers wanted to assess our command of the English language and wanted to see, how creative our minds could work. And I just loved it. I loved the whole experience of creating these new characters, of new identities, of starting with a blank sheet of paper and seeing where it took you. I was just always really driven by that. I guess it became or formalized into a sporting passion probably when I was about 10 or 11. I can't remember why, but I started following Rangers, and I can vividly remember the moment. I was sitting in my living room in Kirkwall, where we lived, the main town in Orkney, and it was like the news at 9 or something like that on a Saturday night. And the last item on the news, which I wasn't really watching, but I can still see it, I can still visualise it. The last item on the news was that Rangers had just won the Scottish Cup that day, beating Aberdeen 2-1. I can see myself turning around to mum and dad going, "Oh, that's a great result because I support Rangers." I don't remember knowing of Rangers or even really football before that. But yeah, from then on, football just became this all-consuming passion. And I loved playing it, obviously. Every spare minute I was out playing with my friends and kicking a ball around. But I had this real, almost, I guess, innate desire to write about it.
Mm.
And my dad worked at one of the high schools in Orkney, and he was a technician at them. So he had a pretty broad church of responsibilities. One of them was to look after all the computing equipment that the school had. And at weekends, he just got into this habit of bringing home an Apple Mac 2, which I was utterly fascinated by. I mean, remember, this is a time before the internet.
Yeah.
There was no videos to watch. You couldn't play games on it. It was a functional piece of equipment that you could use to write, and that was about it. But that was good enough for me. So on a Saturday night, I would watch, we had a program called Sports Scene, which preceded Match of the Day, which was focusing, it was like a Scottish Match of the Day, and then you had normal Match the day after. And I would watch these programs back to back, and I would take notes. And then on the Sunday morning, I would write match reports about them as if it was a newspaper match report using this Apple Mac. And I don't remember thinking I need to do this or I should try to do this. It just happened, and it became this recurring thing. So my friends would go out and they would try to, recreate something that Yuri Djorkaeff has done for Inter Milan, or try to recreate Jurgen Klinsmann's swan dive, celebrating a tap-in that they've scored in the old jumpers for goalpost days. And I would do all that too. But I would also write about the games that I'd watched. And yeah, it was funny how it all got started, but
And how
it
old
did
were you at
start
that point?
and it's never stopped. I was about 10 or 11. We were
Wow.
definitely still in Orkney.
That
We were
young.
definitely still in Orkney. And I think it would have been like the final couple of years of primary school. As I say, I started and I've just never stopped.
That's amazing. I think it's, I don't know, from personal experience as well, I think it's fairly rare to find something you're so passionate about at such a young age, because it's not niche, but it's a very specific category you're going into there.
It's the only thing I can remember wanting to do, to be absolutely honest with you. I don't remember wanting to be anything other than a sports writer.
Yeah.
And we had a newsagents that at the bottom of our street, and every day I would get up and I would run down to the newsagents after school. Again, remember, this was, as I said earlier, a really safe time, so I could leave the house on my own. I could run down the street, and I would go into the newsagents after school. And by that time, the day's newspapers had arrived. They had to be flown up to the islands and then distributed. So they were there by the time I finished school, and I would spend, oh God, I don't know how much time just turning them over, looking at the back pages, reading, what was being said in the Daily Record or the Mail or the Express, or when I took the fancy or the notion, the Times or the Telegraph. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I just knew instinctively that this is what I want to do and this is what I want to be. And it's never wavered. It's never changed.
What do you think it gave you? Why do you think it was something that became such a passion at such a young age?
My first instinct is freedom, but I had so much of that anyway because of where I lived. So maybe I was just used to freedom and I just leaned in hard at every sight of it. I enjoyed the opportunity to create something, the opportunity to tell stories, and I've always liked the English language. I mean, I've always liked languages full stop. I mean, when I went to high school, I learned Spanish, German, French, a tiny little bit of Gaelic, a few phrases in Norwegian. So I've always been fascinated by languages generally. But the English language, okay, I could say this was good, but what's another way of saying that? How many other ways can I say it? So, yeah, I think is it overstating it to say that it fulfilled me? I mean, probably not.
No. Yeah.
It gave me the opportunity to, you know what, probably more than anything, it gave me the opportunity to be productive in my own time. Like when it was just me and my friends weren't available to go and play football and, you know, brothers and sisters weren't around. How do I fill the time it's just me? And how can I be productive using that time? I guess that's what that was.
Yeah. And then you, obviously you grow up a bit more. You were younger at that time, but you grow up, you continue, working on that passion of yours. You joined Bunkered, I believe, was it 2004-ish? Something like that, I think.
That's
Um,
right. April Fool's Day 2004.
really?
Hmm. Not sure who the fool was. Well, I
No.
do. It was them. They it was their mistake, but never mind. I'm happy they made it.
Well, it can't be that big of a mistake, seeing as you're still there a few years on.
Yeah, I've managed to convince the right people, I suppose. Yeah.
But what made you, obviously, you've only spoken about football so far. So obviously the passion was with football. What
Mhm.
drove you into golf? Was it more, it was a job, I'll take it, or was there something else there?
Yeah, it's a bit of that, no doubt. I was at the University of Strathclyde studying English and sociology. Again, tunnel vision, knew what I wanted to be, and I guess I saw a degree as just the final bit of the path that I had to walk in order to go and do this thing.
Yeah.
But I was also very aware that journalism isn't necessarily something you need to study. It's not like medicine where there's a right and a wrong way to do it. It's not like law where there are very particular phrases and rules and litigation that you need to be, familiar with. Journalism's almost like it's a learned habit, and I was already doing a lot of stuff in that space that I didn't think a degree was going to make that much of a difference. I'd built up a lot of connections already. I'd, built a decent bank of experience writing for anyone who would take copy from teenage me, which fortunately there was quite a lot. And so I
Mm.
was bored at uni. I was doing English and sociology, great subjects, but I was just killing time, and I didn't really feel like I was learning anything that was going to be
Yeah.
of tangible value. And so I was repeating my second year at Strathclyde, not because I failed my exams, but because I didn't show up to do them, which is terrible. But yeah, I was repeating second year, and I saw the job advertised with Bunkered, and they were looking for a junior staff journalist. And to rewind all the way back to the start in Orkney, golf was actually the first sport that I was exposed to.
Mm.
There's VHS footage of me playing on a public putting green that was right over the wall from the house where I grew up. And I spent all my time there. It was 20 pence around. I knew the people who worked at it, who lived on the other side of the park from us. I knew their kids, and all summer long I was there. And I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of rounds I played, but I just loved it. And,
Mm.
there was that. So I was familiar with golf. It, it was probably inserted into my psyche from a very young age as something I could do and enjoy. But equally, my dad, whilst I say my family wasn't sporty, there were just certain events that seemed to always be on every year. London Marathon being one, Wimbledon being another, and the Masters.
Oh.
My dad was absolutely obsessed with the Masters. And to be honest, still is. He's 87 now, but he still likes watching it. And he wasn't really that bothered about any of the players. I mean, he loved Greg Norman, Seve Ballesteros, and Gary Player in particular, Lee Trevino. But for him, the Masters was all about the beauty of the golf course and
Mm.
the colours and all that sort of stuff. But I remember April '96, about 4 months before we left Orkney, he was very insistent that I sit down with him to watch that year's Masters. Like, you must stop what you're doing, put the Apple Mac away, come and sit with me and watch this. Because he said, there's a guy playing who's got a really funny name and he's possibly going to change the world. You're going to know a lot about this guy for a long time. And that was Tiger. That was my introduction to Tiger
Oh.
Woods. And so, yeah, if we fast forward again now to looking at that job opportunity. I'm going, right, I could stay at uni, knuckle down, do another couple of years, get into another couple of years worth of debt, not really learn anything that I think's of any value, and hope that a job like this is still available then.
Yeah.
Or I could gamble on myself. And it wasn't really much of a gamble. If I don't get the job, I just go back to uni and keep doing what I'm doing. Or I could, I guess, back myself and go, you know what, I've got a lot of experience already at a young age. I can do the job. The job spec looks really appealing and I've got value to add. So why not just give it a go? Fortunately, I got offered the job. I was paid the princely sum of £11,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
which went up to 12 after 3 months. And maths was never my strong point, so I thought I was a millionaire. And
Yep.
yeah, I honestly only intended to stay for 2 years. That was the plan. I was going to stay for 2 years, and that would be my launch pad. I would learn a lot of stuff. I'd get invaluable experience, and then I'd go on somewhere else and try to become the next Graham Spears or Tom English, Hugh McDonald, Alan Davidson, maybe even Hugh McElvany. Who knows? I had highfalutin designs, as most arrogant 19-year-olds do. So that was the plan. Plans changed. 22, nearly 23 years later, here I am still.
I was going to ask that, like, what do you remember from that first version of professional Michael? Like, looking back at it now, you know, over two decades ago.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was absolutely soaking wet behind the ears. I probably thought that I was a much better journalist or writer than I was. I was definitely immature. I was naive. I could also say I was probably a bit more fun than I am now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think more than anything else, I mean, I can sit here and I could pick apart the way I was and cringe at the sort of earliest pieces that I wrote for Bunkered. But more than anything else, like, there was just this enthusiasm. I was eager to learn. I was excited to be doing this thing I'd always dreamed of doing. And whilst at that point I didn't really have a passion for Bunkered and I had only some passion for golf, I think what really sustained me was, you know, you're doing it. You're doing that thing you've always dreamed of doing. You're making that young Orkney kid proud.
Yeah. You're really in the midst of things all of a sudden, aren't you? You're doing the job. And
Yeah, 100%.
you obviously, you mentioned it's been over 2 decades now. I feel like in today's world, if you look on LinkedIn, people are kind of jumping from job to job every year or every 2 years. And honestly, I'm guilty of having done that as well, to be honest. So it's, I find it quite rare, you know, to be speaking to someone that's been in, you know, at the same place for so long. What's kept you there that long? I guess Bunkered might be listening, so.
What's kept me? I mean, you're right. It is very rare, and it feels like over the last 2, 3, maybe even 5 years since COVID, there's been a lot of movement in the industry, which I think is a symptom of the media industry evolving and changing. But that is also one of the things that's kept me where I am as long as I've been there. You know, I love the fact that the job I do now and the platforms that we have, the tools that we have at our disposal are so different to the ones that we started out with. Facebook wasn't a thing when I was starting out. Podcast didn't exist. YouTube didn't exist. The internet was pretty raw still in 2004. And now those are mainstays of what we do. We still have our magazine and, you know, very proud of that. Very proud of the product that it is. But I think that constant evolution, I like being part of that, and I like learning new skills. I like challenging myself and pushing myself in different ways. The other things, well, opportunities have continued to arise. You know, I was lucky in 2009. I was promoted to senior staff writer, and sometime later, digital editor, then assistant editor. then deputy editor. So I've continued to, I guess, climb the ladder while still being able to do the things that I really like doing, which is
Yeah.
quite rare in journalism. In journalism, it tends to be, I've seen so many examples of this, that as you climb up the ladder, you stop doing the thing that you were first passionate about, because your role changes from being a creator to almost an administrator, which, that can be a good thing for people, or it can be a bad thing. But I'm quite lucky. I've been able to continue to create whilst taking on other responsibilities. But I guess the single biggest thing, I said that I'd only planned to stay for 2 years. Excuse me. As 2 years was almost up, I think I was just 3 months shy of having been there for 2 years, I met my wife. And she joined the company at a time when the company decided it was going to launch a women's lifestyle magazine, a sort of Scottish equivalent of OK or Hello magazine. And so they brought on this entirely new editorial team, and Jules was part of it. And she only stayed 3 months. It wasn't for her, but I got her mobile number before she left. And yeah, it's like anything else, you've got a blossoming relationship. That's your focus. And I guess other things like career progression and what am I going to do next become less of a priority, because something in somebody else is your priority. So yeah, blame her.
It's all Jules' fault.
100%. I tell her that often.
It does change your perspective a little bit, though. It did for me as well, definitely, around life and, what priority career has in your life as well, when, other factors start coming into place, such as,
So true.
Loved ones or children, for example, as well.
Exactly that, yeah.
But you touched upon an interesting point, and I was going to get, I wanted to ask about that because I'm really curious. Obviously, now you're editor at Bunkered, having been there now for 20 years. You mentioned how you're still able to dabble in the areas that you're passionate about, such as writing. You still do write a lot. What do you think has changed in you, though, since becoming, editor and going into more of a, I'm guessing, managerial / leadership role? Do you think it's changed you as a person, or as a not worker, but in kind of your job and your career?
I'm not sure it's changed me that much. I think it's just brought other parts of my personality are now surfaced a lot more, whereas previously they weren't, whether that was by design or by opportunity. I think I've always been a really empathetic person, and that's something that has definitely surfaced when you're managing, a diverse group of people, and you're a stakeholder for a trusted and much loved brand.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it sounds slightly cheesy, but I just feel like I'm the custodian of Bunkered. It's not mine. I've got no illusions about ownership or anything like that. Bunkered doesn't belong to me. It belongs to a family business. So yeah, I never lose sight of that, and instead I guess lean into the responsibility of trying to make sure that I leave it in a better place than I found it. Now, I'm very lucky. I found it in a really, really incredible place because of the frankly unbelievable people who've gone before me, who taught me so much, and I'm so grateful to them for everything that they've done, not just for Bunkered and getting it into the place that it could sustain, endure, and thrive after they've gone, but everything that they've done for me as well. I'm extraordinarily grateful for them. But yeah, in terms of how I've changed, I just think that I recognize, I'm very conscious of the responsibility that comes with leading a brand that's established, that's trusted, that has a big audience, a diverse audience, and trying to, I guess, empower the people that I work with and who report into me to be the best that they can be. I never genuinely thought I would get as much of a kick out of seeing other people develop than I have, and genuinely, it's so rewarding. You see guys in the team, Lewis Fraser, for example, the difference in Lewis from when he joined us in 2022, I think, to where he is now. I mean, he was a really shy, reserved young lad who loved golf and wanted to write about it. Now Lewis is having conversations with some of the most influential, important people in the game. He's a co-host of mine on the Bunker podcast every week, and he's a phenomenal young broadcaster. His confidence is growing, his presence, his skill set's growing. And I take a huge amount of pride and excitement in that. He's got a very high ceiling, as do the rest of the guys in the team. And it's just fun to support them on that. So thinking back to the premise of the question, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm less selfish than I was previously, less focused on what am I doing today? What's the next story that I'm going to write? What am I putting my byline on? And much more, how do we make this thing and all of you a big success?
Yeah. And you mentioned just now getting a big kick out of, seeing people progress and develop. But with that said, looking at everything that you do, obviously still being able to write as well and do you're wearing a lot of different hats in your role, I'm sure. What's the part of your job that you enjoy the most today?
My goodness. I mean, I still do enjoy writing. That was a red pen for me when I got promoted into the position that I'm in about 13 months ago. It came very much out the blue. It was, without getting into it, it was difficult. It was a very difficult time. It was a surprising opportunity when it came along. But I was very clear that if I'm going to step up and accept more responsibility, I'm not prepared to, stop writing.
Yeah.
That's non-negotiable for me. So, I still get a kick out of, lining up a big interview, or, like last year, for example, about the middle of the year, we had Gareth Bale on the front cover of the magazine, and that was a pretty long process in terms of lining him up, getting to speak to him, working with his team in terms of delivering that. That's when you see that magazine hit the shelves, and I honestly think it's probably the best front cover we've ever done. But when you see that on the shelves and you almost hear the reaction of the industry, like, oh wow, Bunker's got Gareth Bale on the front cover. That's a statement.
Yeah.
That gives me a real kick. So I love that part of it. You can probably tell by just how much I talk. I love podcasting as well. I think that's a really fun medium. But it's also like on a serious point, it's a really intimate platform as well. I can write and I can be expressive and I can put my point across, but I also have time on my side when I write. I can reread it, I can change bits, I can add bits. And so the finished article that people see is been something that's been slaved over and is probably in its third or fourth version by the time they see it. Whereas with podcasting, well, what you hear is what you get. So I think you can be a bit more, exactly. And I think that's good because you can connect better with people. You can make mistakes. You can flub your lines. And I think that's pretty human, to be honest, in this day and age when we're surrounded by all sorts of inauthentic garbage and AI slop. I think we are all on some level really craving that real human connection. Fundamentally, people like people.
Yeah.
And I think podcasts are a really exciting and weirdly straightforward way of tapping into that part of our collective mindset.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think as well the medium itself suits a big audience. I think within this world of, everything's constantly moving, everyone's constantly on the go and everything, being able to just stick an earphone in and listen to it, to someone, ramble about whatever it might be.
We all love eavesdropping, I think is the nature of it. We're all voyeurs at heart. That can take many forms, but we're all fascinated by each other, and we might not all like one another. And, I'm perfectly aware from the comment section and my inboxes that people don't always agree with me and, aren't always going to like what I say or even me. And that's fine. Like that works the other way too, and that's the nature of living. We're all drawn to some people. We all find common ground with some people. we're persuaded to move in the opposite direction from others, and we disagree fundamentally with other people say. That is the crux of humanity, and I think that's what podcasts can really, really leverage, and they do it really, really well.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I find, your writing specifically, I love the way you write. I think, it's a kind of combination of humor, but also honesty and, I don't know, this kind of sense of just bluntness a lot of the time, which I personally really appreciate. But you just touched on something that I saw you wrote about on LinkedIn as well, and thought was quite interesting. That's negative or criticism or negative comments that you receive. That was obviously one example that you provided, but is that something that's like the norm for you now, or was that a kind of negative comments? That was quite a crude one, but is criticism of that sort the norm? Or is it something that's unusual?
No, it's definitely the exception. I mean, I think there are, for the most part, if somebody disagrees, they tend to just keep it to
Yeah.
themselves, shake their head, tut,
Yeah.
and move on.
Yeah.
But I think, social media has definitely made it much easier for people, if they are predisposed or triggered sufficiently, to just vent, almost tweet first, think later. And I've done it. Well, I'm guilty of it as well. I'm not proud of it, but the platform is there, and sometimes impulse takes over. I would say I'm never deliberately antagonistic. I don't set out to be that. I'm really pleased you used the word honest, because that's what I just try and be with everything. Life's too short to deceive or try and pull the wool over people's eyes, or frankly to be something that you're not. And as I touched on earlier, we're surrounded by artificial,
Yeah.
inauthentic examples of, well, whatever you want, really. And yeah, I'd much rather just be me. If someone wants to criticize me for being me, that's fine. Bring it on. I'm thick-skinned. It's there are times that it's jarring, and you really feel the urge to snap back. But listen, I've had every word you can imagine said to me. Never to my face, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But always online. I've had threats. There was an incident when Liv had not long emerged. It's probably about a year into it. So what we doing 3 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
And I was using a platform called TweetDeck to schedule a post that I wanted to put out from the Bunkered account that I knew I wouldn't be around to do at the time. And so TweetDeck, I tend not to use it, but on this occasion I had, not realizing I was still logged into my own personal account. And what TweetDeck did at that time was it showed you all of your messages, including the ones that it would otherwise filter out from your phone. So there's like a separate section of messages that are like spam that it would filter away, or abuse, not just spam. And there was this account that had been a very anti-Liv account, funnily enough, that had been sending me increasingly aggressive and threatening messages over the period of about 6 months that I hadn't seen. So I got to see them all in this one stream. And yeah, it was definitely unnerving. It's definitely unsettling. But listen, I'm the one that's putting my face to my account. I'm the one that's putting my real name to my account. It's pretty easy to get in touch with me if anyone wants to. I'm not hiding behind an avatar that's fake. I'm not hiding behind a fake name. I would say that I am scaring them way more than they are bothering me. So it really doesn't bother me. You shouldn't have to put up with it, but part and parcel.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it, really, isn't it? That you're bothering them a lot more than they're bothering you. I think it's probably the right approach to take, and it's something that I've heard from a lot of people. Like creators in the golf industry a lot as well. That I think 95% of comments and everything are positive, but it's those 5% that can be quite crass and rude and whatever. And a lot of the time, it can really get to you as well. But you said obviously that you're thick skinned. Is there anything that you kind of do to stop the online world, creeping into your actual life?
I don't do enough. I find that I am online far too much.
Mm,
And it's because it's habitual because of the nature of the job, and particularly I think with the vast majority of professional golf being played in America, you will find that news that breaks at 4 o'clock in a working day for somebody in Chicago or Philadelphia is breaking for you at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, oh God, I better go in and do something about that. So I think just because of where most of the world's golf is played, you do tend to find that you're online longer than you ought to be. So it is partly habitual. It comes from a little bit of a place of, FOMO as well. You don't want to
yeah,
miss out. Um, Not just because that's bad for business, but because who wants to be outside the story? Nobody
yeah,
does. Everyone wants to be part of Jack Byrne's inner circle or circle of trust, whatever it was he called it. So there's that. And listen, also, I can't deny the fact that I like it. I think that social media is a really great space.
yeah.
It's increasingly less so, but I think it can be a real place for good. It's been incredibly good for me in my career.
Mm,
It's allowed me to build my profile and connect with a great number of people. So there's so much good that can come from social media. But like anything else, if you want the good, you're going to have to accept a little bit of the bad as well. And
yeah,
honestly, people can say within reason, they can say what they like to me because I liken it to something that funnily enough, Rory McIlroy said. I asked him this question 2 summers ago at the Scottish Open when his caddy Harry Diamond was getting an awful lot of criticism, as he always has, but he was suddenly getting criticism from people within the tour, like Hank Haney, and I think Smiley Kaufman had criticised him following Rory's US Open loss to Bryson at Pinehurst in 24. And I asked Rory the question, it was a softball question because I'm on Harry's side with this. I was like, I asked him the question about, what do you make of what these people are saying about your
mm,
guy who never really says anything publicly, who just stands quietly behind you but has to take all this crap? And Rory put it really well. He's like, well, if I wouldn't go to those people for advice, why would I listen to what they have to say? And that's the view that I take with
yeah. It's fair.
social media. If someone doesn't want to put their real name or face to a comment that is, negative and various shades of negative, why should I worry about it?
Yeah,
That's it says more about them than it does about me. If somebody that I respect has something critical to say about me, that's where you stop and you pause and you go, right, where's that coming from? What's and you pay more attention to it. But
yeah,
yeah, all these faceless, nameless accounts, I mean, they can howl at the moon for the rest of their days if they like. And I'm learning to not give them the bite that they want.
yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, it's a weird one, especially of the social media side of things. It's like you
Hmm.
said, there's a lot of positives to it, but there's also that small side of the internet that's yeah, can have negative effects on people. But
Hmm.
yeah. Um I want to shift gears completely and talk about a piece that you wrote which kind of resonated with me and kind of touched me quite deeply. And that was about miscarriage and the
Hmm.
experiences that you went through with that. And it was
Hmm.
a beautifully written piece, considering the topic. But I guess just wanted to ask you face to face if you wouldn't mind, sharing a bit more about your experiences around that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and ask anything you like. I'm an open book about this. Me and my wife are both very open about our experiences. We'd like to not have something to be this open about, but
Yeah.
listen, it's part of us. It's part of our story. We've been through it, and you know, I suppose maybe it's slightly easier because we're the other side of it now. As I mentioned earlier, we've got our daughter who is just the greatest little person you could possibly ever hope for. She sings all the time. She dances all the time. She's just the happiest little person, and it's the blessing of all blessings to be her dad. But yeah, the journey to getting there was difficult. You know, Jules and I married in 2011, and we took a couple of years just enjoying being married, going on nice holidays, and I guess trying to just settle into the next chapter of our lives together. And then it was probably about 2014, latter half of that we decided, like, actually, no, we'd quite like to start a family. I was 30 by that point. Jules was a couple of years older, and we just thought, yeah, we're ready to start a family now. And like everyone else, you go into it very naive and thinking, this is going to be really linear. It's going to be straightforward. We'll start trying, and probably a year from now, we'll be parents. And you are so wonderfully naive about the. It's funny, people call it the miracle of birth, and it's an absolutely incredible thing, really, when you think about it. But it was 2015, January 2015. I remember I was at the PGA show in Orlando, which, for those who don't know, PGA show is basically Comic-Con for golf.
Mm-hmm.
It's where all of the biggest brands, equipment manufacturers, footwear manufacturers, apparel brands, everyone else, they all convene for a big trade show. It's business to business. It's not open to the public, but it's like the first big item on your calendar in the golf industry each calendar year. And I was there with a colleague, and before I went, Jules and I had a feeling that she might be pregnant, because there are signs, obviously. We're like, okay, right, let's just see how the week unfolds. Let's not get too carried away. And so off I went to America. The event came and went, and at the tail end of it, there's usually quite a lot of golf played, because there's a lot of golfers there.
Yep.
Of course, you're going to play some golf. And Orlando is a pretty good place to play golf in January.
It's not bad.
So I was at a Strixon media event, and I was playing with a Strixon rep, and funnily enough, two fellow Scots. One of them, Eddie Reid, who used to be at TGI, which was a big, and it is a big buying group. And the other was Gordon Stewart, who's, as it turns out, and this was completely by chance, is the head pro at the club a mile up the road.
Oh.
So I was aware at that point, Jules and I had spoken, I was away, and she's like, yeah, I think I might do a test tomorrow. Okay, fine. We were about 11, 12 holes into the round, and I glanced at my phone, as I'd been doing sort of intermittently, and I had 4 missed calls from her. And I thought, okay, that can only mean one thing. Phoned her back from the middle of the fairway whilst waiting to play my shot, and of course she revealed, yeah, it's a positive test.
Mm-hmm.
In that mind, everything changes. And sorry, in that moment, everything completely changes. And we spoke for a minute or two, and I came off the call because I had to get back to playing. And I'm sure Eddie and Gordon, who were in a buggy about 30 yards away, they either overheard or they must have known, judging by my reactions, what the news was or what I'd just been told. But they didn't say anything. It was quite funny. I can actually still hear one of them, I can't remember who, saying to me, Michael, what club have you got? And that snapped me back into reality of, right, I've got to finish this round.
Yeah.
So, long story short, that was fine. Go home, and for the next, what would it be, 10 weeks or so, everything's going great. And you think, yeah, this is amazing. You start very quickly making plans. You spend your evenings having conversations about names for a boy, names for a girl. What we're going to do upstairs? Will we take the spare room and turn that into a nursery, or will we get the box room and turn that into a nursery? When are we going to tell our parents? All these kind of things. And it was, as I say, it was a textbook, if there is such a thing, pregnancy, right up until we went for our 12-week scan, which, again, for people who don't know, that's the first major scan that you have. And it's really weird now that you think back on it, and I've spent probably too much time over the years thinking back, but when we arrived, the waiting room was absolutely packed.
Mm-hmm.
And one by one, we saw, because of the nature of the layout, people would go in one door and then emerge about 10 meters away from another door. So it's almost like you go in, you get your scan, and then you re-emerge on the other side with your scan photos all excited and happy.
Yeah.
And we saw, honestly, there must have been 20 couples doing this loop. And we were last. And our appointment came and went, came and went, came and went. And I don't know why we just kept getting bumped down the list, but ultimately it was just us in the waiting room at the end. And finally they called us through, so we went in, and without going into the details of what happened, the staff there told us there's no heartbeat. The baby's died at 9 weeks. It's what they call a missed miscarriage, insofar as there was nothing to suggest that there was anything wrong. There was no physical symptoms of a miscarriage. There was nothing. To all intents and purposes, you go in there believing that you're going to get amazing news and you're going to get this grainy black and white photo that you'll take away and that you'll share with friends, family, and anyone on social media. And I can still remember them giving us that news. It was uniquely devastating. And, obviously it was especially hard on Jules. She had to bear the physical agony of it all, waking up in the morning and that thing that was there is no longer there. Obviously there's a procedure required to, do the necessary work. It was just crushing. It really was. And that took a lot of time to get over, particularly I think because there was no suggestion. You're just blindsided by this news. But I think we'd both surprise each other by how resilient we are, and we were determined and dedicated to having a family. There was nothing to suggest we couldn't. On the contrary, there was evidence to suggest that we could have a family.
Yeah.
So you just take the reassurance that you can and the positives that you can from what is a monumentally bleak situation, and you go again. And yeah, Jules got pregnant again about 6 months later. And again, about 7 weeks into that pregnancy, or from the positive test, I remember her waking me up. She didn't wake me. I awoke to her screaming from the bathroom. And the exact same thing happened again about another 6 months later. Now, the interesting thing is, in Scotland, certainly, I don't know if this is true more widely, but in Scotland, after 3 miscarriages, that's the point at which they'll start to pay a bit closer attention, and they will investigate to see if there's maybe an underlying reason for this. Because you're then experiencing what medical professionals call recurrent miscarriage.
Yeah.
So every test we had done said, look, there's nothing wrong. It's just dumb luck. That's never ever going to be a good enough answer for me.
No.
I'm a journalist, Danny. I'm my guiding principle, professionally and personally, is pursuit of truth. I want answers, and I'm not going to be satisfied with don't know what to tell you.
No.
That's never a good enough answer. And so, as it turns out, my wife's of exactly the same mindset as me, and she spent a great amount of time online researching, and she found eventually this place at somewhere in the Midlands. It was Coventry Hospital we ended up going to. I don't know if it was the University of Coventry or whatnot, but a place in the Midlands anyway that was doing research into what they recognised as a higher proportion of something called, and it's a terribly blunt name, but a higher percentage of natural killer cells in women
Mm.
being linked to an increased likelihood of miscarriage. In layman's terms, these cells are hypersensitive, and when there's a pregnancy, they see this as this alien invasion and they
Okay.
jump to protect. And so we said, look, and this was only available privately. So we said, look, nothing to lose here. Let's go and get this tested and get checked out. It was the day after my wife's birthday. On her birthday, we'd been to see Bryan Adams, of all people, at the Hydro in Glasgow. And the next day we got up, we drove down, and yeah, I mean, the tests are pretty invasive, but they came back and they said to us, yeah, you know, you do have a higher percentage or a higher incidence of natural killer cells. So their solution to that was, next time you get pregnant, take this medication, which I believe was, from memory, a type of steroid, and that will suppress the natural killer cells.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, again, layman's terms, if natural killer cells are on the attack, this is the force field, this is the barrier.
Sure.
And, you know, it was still a fairly new study. I suppose in some ways we were guinea pigs, but we're like, yeah, look, let's give it a go. It took some time, strangely enough, for us to get pregnant again, but we did in January 2017. So 2 years on from, you know, first getting pregnant, and Jules went on this medication straight away. I think the thing is, Danny, that once you've been through the experience of miscarriage, getting pregnant is no longer something that you can take a huge amount of pleasure in or
Mm-hmm.
celebrate or enjoy. It is utterly terrifying. And every morning, not just until the 12-week scan where everything was good, but every morning until my daughter was born, I woke up terrified of hearing that noise from the bathroom or hearing Jules crying. So much so that I tried to stay awake as long as I could. And so, you know, the first book that I wrote, which came out in 2016, I wrote that pretty much in the middle of the night because I can be awake, and my sleep patterns just went completely to shot. I think I was probably sleeping about 3 hours a night
Oh,
for
wow.
the best part of a year. So it ages you quickly, and
Yeah.
it changes you fundamentally as well. We booked private scans. So this is pregnancy number 4. We booked private scans at, let me see, I think 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and then we have the one in the NHS at 12 weeks, and everything was great. But after each bit of good news, it's funny, Jules and I were discussing this the other day. She noticed that I would come out of the scan and immediately I was panicking again. You know, I said at the top, I'm a worrier by nature.
Yeah.
But we'd come out of the scan and I would go, yeah, it was fine 5-10 minutes ago, but is it still fine now?
Oh,
And that was
yeah.
how it was for the full 9 months. Happily, like it all worked out. You know, Sadie
Yeah.
was born, and you know she's just an absolute bundle of joy. But yeah, it was so difficult, that whole, I guess that whole 2 and a bit year window. And it's funny that the way that your mind adjusts to dealing with something that's so traumatic that doesn't have, you know, answers. And I, in the absence of answers, you sort of fill the void with your own conclusions that you've drawn, and they get really misshapen by just the mental anguish that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So you start to think, you know, are people withdrawing from us? Like, I'm not seeing my friends as much. Are they withdrawing from me? You know, lest miscarriage be contagious, or is this some sort of it's daft thinking back on this now, but again, it's real. I want to be honest, but you think, is this a government thing? You know, the
Mm.
population is spiraling out of control. There's too many people. Is there something quite literally in the water that's trying to reduce the number of
Wow,
people
really?
being born and all that
Mm.
sort of stuff, and successful pregnancies, and your mind races. And the whole experience really changed me. And listen, I'm proud that we got through it. I'm proud, so proud of Jules for her resilience and her commitment to just keeping going and keeping going, because she's, as I say, she's bearing the physical burden.
Yeah.
Um, but I just tried to do my best by her and make sure that she had all the support she needed, because that's what she needed. That's I think what helped me cope as well was being useful. But
Okay.
I guess I didn't realize at the time the sort of mental toll that was taken. And yeah, there's everything's turned out fine, but I am, I think, fundamentally and forever changed by the whole experience.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks so much for sharing all of that. That's it takes a lot to share that, and I know it obviously happened a while ago, but still, it's understandably, I can really tell that obviously it's a big part of your life and
Mm.
who you are today. And but it's also nice, reassuring. I don't know what the right word is, to hear that you're able to look back at it seemingly and uh, analyze it a little bit. That you can kind of look back at it and you understand it a little bit more holistically in hindsight. It seems.
Definitely, yeah.
Um, I mentioned early on that that it spoke very very personally to me, because actually it was a lot more recently that it was, when was it? Last November, I believe. So literally about 6 months ago, something quite similar. Every one of these situations is very unique, but something somewhat similar happened to us as well. That
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
that we or my wife, we got pregnant. My wife got pregnant. We with our second, and then it was. I remember going to the 12-week scan. I couldn't make it because I had to look after our 2-year-old at home, and I just remember, and it still haunts me somewhat thinking about it. Just getting that phone call and just hearing her cry,
Hmm.
phone, and didn't even say anything, and immediately just you know everything just drops. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't even know how to describe it properly, but it was just this weird,
Oh, you're
everything
you're
just
you're
kind of.
so right. I think you've used the right word there as well. And listen, I'm so sorry you guys have been through that.
No, thank you.
It's incredible how many people have been through it, and the
Yeah.
incidence is so high. And it's something I'm really passionate about, is that, you know, when the prevalence is what it is. I mean, you can research for yourselves. Anyone listening, you can see just how frequent and how you know recurrent miscarriage can be. There needs to be more done. I'm so grateful for organisations like Tommy's, for example,
Yeah.
who provide that level of support. But more needs to be done. This isn't right that this happens and is happening to so many people, and not enough is, in my opinion, being done to find answers. There's a lot of support. There is
Mhm.
so much support, but I would like there to be less support and more answers. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that, you know, the country has a responsibility to look into, because it is heartbreaking and it does change people, fundamentally. Yeah, I've never actually said this out loud, but look, I've struggled a lot in the time since, and I've seen my GP numerous times just about how I'm feeling, about anxiety, about stress, and I guess just about my own mental state. I've spoken to therapists about this, at great length, and every professional I've spoken to has used the term PTSD. Like, we
Okay.
think that you've got some PTSD here. And every time that's been mentioned, I've run a mile. I've not gone for the follow-up conversations. I remember my GP saying, I think you're exhibiting all the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. I want you to come back in 3 weeks' time. We'll talk again. I never went back. When the therapist that I saw brought it up, again, I ran a mile from it because, and this is the crux of humanity, I think, and maybe some people like me are more predisposed to thinking this way than others, but nobody wants a label,
No.
and nobody wants a label that's got stigma.
Yeah.
And I don't perceive or regard anybody who has labels as being anything less or inferior or weak. I don't think like that, but I fully expect other people to feel like that about me. I that's not what I want to be. I just don't want a label. I just want to be me. I want to be Michael.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that, from everything I've read and learned about PTSD, yeah, that's what I've got. There's no doubt about it. And that's hard, and that's going to take a bit of work still, but do you get Facebook memories pop up?
Yes.
I don't know if you use Facebook. You get Facebook memories, and I've stopped looking at them because I can't relate to the person that was posting stuff 10, 12, 13 years ago. I don't recognize it, and that's really, really unsettling because it's me. It's just a younger version. Now, I can look at it and I can cringe about some of the stuff I was getting up to, about some of the stuff I was saying, about how, I guess, malformed my worldview was. I was still finding my political identity, finding the causes that matter most to me, and all that sort of stuff. And I was young and didn't have a mortgage and all that sort of stuff, and you're just living life, right? I can't relate to that person at all in that respect, but I also can't relate to them because they just seem more fun. I know I'm not as fun as I used to be. I know I'm not as easygoing as I used to be. I know I'm probably harder to know than I used to be. My circle of friends has shrunk as I've got older, partly through consequence, also partly by design on my part. And I'm definitely more introverted. It's funny, I talked earlier about podcasts and enjoying them, and I do. I sincerely love them, but as my job's required me to be more, I guess, extroverted and accessible, I've found that in my private moments, I'm much more introverted. There are people that I just choose not to see as much anymore, not because I dislike them, but just because that's not what I want right now. And, I guess I can be performatively extroverted, but definitely I can feel myself drawing back in. I'm happy in my own company. That's why I've written pieces in the recent past about, like, I think one of them was titled "The Irrefutable Joy of Playing Golf Alone," which seems to it goes against everything that golf's meant to be, right? Golf's best enjoyed with friends, and I agree with that. It's best enjoyed with company. It's best when it's competitive and you walk in after a medal and you see how you've scored relative to everyone else. And that's all true. But for me, golf is about something different. It's I guess a way for me to slow the world down, to escape and get that time with myself that I need to just process stuff that might otherwise be medicated or require therapy. It's not for everyone, but I can go and play golf on my own for 4 hours and there are no questions asked. Imagine the variety of responses you would get if you said, "I'm going for a walk in the hills on my own for 4 hours, and I probably won't be looking at my phone.
Yeah.
No one asks those questions when it comes to golf.
No.
And to that end, golf, it would be very disingenuous of me to sit here and say that golf has helped me through it, because it has only helped to the extent that I've just described there. But I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that it exists, and I'm grateful that it allows me that freedom. This is so weird. I've just realised I used the word freedom about my childhood, and maybe it is a little bit of that as well. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about it now. Maybe that's me harking back to childhood and the safety that I felt and the freedom that I had. And golf, I guess, provides me to have that safe space and that freedom to process all of the mental challenges and the other challenges that I've had to face over the last decade or so.
Yeah. And do you, so obviously you talk about golf as, you know, something that you're using to, I don't know, cope's probably the wrong word, but, you know, to kind of help you move forward. Are there any other actions that you are taking based on, you know, you've heard, you know, you've not officially been given the, as you called it, label of PTSD, but you said the signs are there. Is there anything else that you're looking to do for yourself other than, you know, the golf side of things?
I guess just being more mindful of it. I don't mean mindful in the sense of practicing mindfulness, but being mindful of, you know, the extremely high likelihood that I do have PTSD, the extremely high likelihood that certain things are going to trigger me. I'm aware of them. And yeah, mindful is the wrong word because it has other connotations. I have an awareness now that I didn't have
Yeah.
previously. And my previous reaction to being made aware of those traits and those tendencies was to run a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now I just explore them. That's why I'm happy doing things like this. You know, I think that talking's invaluable, you know, problem shared and all that sort of stuff. But I don't try and resist it, and I don't go, ah, no, I'm absolutely fine. There are days that I'm not fine. There are hours in the day that I'm not fine. And that isn't unique. That is true for absolutely everybody. It's the ebbs and flows of life.
Yeah.
And we all experience them. There are all things that, you know, we've all got our own stories. We've all got our own stuff, our baggage, our incredible experiences, great, bad, all that sort of stuff. I choose to just now try and be aware of my lot in life.
Okay.
And that allows me to hopefully enjoy the highs to the fullest that I possibly can. Because that's the other part of all this. When you're going through all that, it's hard to take pleasure and joy in things that you shouldn't even have to think about taking pleasure and joy in.
Yeah.
You become guarded. You become expectant of the worst because experience has trained you to be that way. And yeah, I think that I just try and now, corny as it sounds and cliche as it sounds, just try and live in the moment. And if that
Mm-hmm.
moment's a good one, enjoy it. If that moment's a bad one, don't run from it. Explore why it's a bad moment and give it its time, you know, give it its place. There's nothing wrong with addressing lower moments in the same way that there's nothing wrong with experiencing and loving the best moments. It's all part of living, and you just got to lean in hard to it all.
Yeah.
Because you only get one go at it, don't you?
That's true. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that, you know, nobody wants a label when it came to what you mentioned about PTSD. From your own experience, why do you think that is?
Because I think we all want to be masters of our own destiny, and we all want to project the best version of ourselves.
Mm.
And the best version of ourselves can be whatever we want from one day to the next. It can be a flawed version, it can be a successful version. And again, I do think social media has given us all a quicker and easier route to do that. Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, they're all just snapshots of the best bits.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's very rare that people share the bad points.
Yeah.
All you're getting is a window into a highlights reel, essentially, of somebody's day, of somebody's week, of somebody's life. And so I think fundamentally it stems from control. Like, we're all control freaks in our own little ways. And we all like to think that we are in control of all this, that we're behind the wheel, that we're steering it. It's not the sat nav telling us where to go. It's us making all our own decisions. Control's a big thing for all of us. And so when something happens that is out of your control and that leads to maybe a set of dominoes falling that leads you to be defined by a different label than you would choose, that's when I think the human instinct is to pull a handbrake and drive in another direction. We all like control of our own lives. We all want to believe that we're in control, but that's true to a point. And I tell this to the guys in the team all the time. Just focus on controlling the controllables.
Yeah.
If it means, let's use the example of trying to get an interview with a top 10 player in the world. What can you control? How I make the approach, how I lay out the opportunity, how I present myself, and how accommodating I'm willing to be in terms of, all right, so they're in, Australia, I'll be up at 6 a.m. to speak to them.
Yeah.
Those are the only bits you can control. What you can't control is whether or not they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
So you need to get comfortable with that. You need to get comfortable with relinquishing some control. And it's on a broader sense, how does that apply to here? Well, let's think of the start and the end of all of this. No one controlled when they were born, and if we all just let nature take its course, none of us are going to be able to control when it stops. So you need to get comfortable with all points between that point and focus on just controlling what you can. But as I said, the instinct I think all humans have is to want more control, which is why if you hear a label being attached to that you don't like, push it away. If you see an opportunity coming down the line that you don't want, you push it away. Resistance is a big thing, I think, for all of us. So it's not sure if that makes sense, but that's just kind of how I view it.
No, it does. It definitely does. I think from my perspective, I think there's also a sense of, and not speaking to you, I mean more kind of society in general, but I think there's this sense of like, a mix of like pride, maybe fear, embarrassment almost of, wanting to present yourself as this perfect image. Like you said, right, you go online on Instagram and everything and everyone looks perfect, right? And no one is, but everyone looks perfect online. And I think there's this sense of, and I think honestly, it's not to pigeonhole, but, men specifically as well, they have this kind of, sense of needing to be the strong person and, nothing's wrong with me ever. And, I'm going to trot on and do my thing. And,
the infallible alpha.
The infallible alpha. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, and it's not all men, right? I'm generalizing massively here, but I think it's something, and it's partly also to do with stigma that still exists out there. Like you said, around. And that's why I asked the question around labels, and how it impacts you. Because I actually think you mentioned like control, and perhaps having a wanting to keep control. I almost think that, accepting something, whatever it might be, whether it's, myself with depression and anxiety or PTSD, whatever it might be, accepting it and, accepting that label, if it is something we want to call it that, that is actually gaining control to some extent.
Totally.
you
Yeah,
know,
completely agree.
because you're
Yep.
accepting it, and that then gives you a way to move forward, saying, okay, I am struggling with XYZ. What can I do to help myself? You know, how can I get to a better place than I am currently now?
Hmm.
And I find that a lot of people that I speak to as well, they, you know, struggle with that part of it. You know, they might be aware of something under the surface, but it's that next step of actually, okay, accepting and then taking action as well can be, and it's a difficult step, right? It's very easy to talk about, but it's extremely difficult to do. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my take on it, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. It's, I think fundamentally you just got to get comfortable with being yourself and knowing that a lot of things and a lot of people will inform who you are and how you are.
Mm,
As I say, control the controllables and go with the flow as best you can.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
don't be ashamed, don't be shy, don't be embarrassed. It's it's I think harder now than it's ever been to not be shy or ashamed or embarrassed, because the world has created many ways in which you can be all those things if you wish to be. You can be any version of yourself you want to be. You can hide blemishes through filters and whatever else.
Yeah.
But equally, I think it comes back down to one of the things we spoke about earlier, which is people like people, and people now more than ever are demanding honesty, authenticity, and more real in the world. In a world that's surrounded by fake and artificial, real things, real people, real experiences, they all they're all really, really invaluable currency.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
Pleasure.
It really means a lot. I can tell obviously it's not easy still to talk about. So it's, yeah, means a lot.
No,
Um,
thank you for listening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. You know, I guess what I would say to anyone who's listening as well, if any of this makes sense to you, if you're going through some of the same stuff that me and my family have been through, as noted, I'm very accessible and I'm always happy to have a chat. You know, my DMs on every platform are open when probably they shouldn't be open on every platform, but they are. I like to be accessible, and I want to be of help. And if I can be of help, all you have to do is reach out and shoot me a DM. If anyone wants any more information on, you know, the treatment that we looked into as well, again, more than happy to share that. But yeah, thank you for this, Danny. It's been a chat I didn't know I needed, to be completely honest. You're right, it's not easy to talk about, but it's important. And I've said this many, many times. Had we not been through what we've been through, had we not experienced the losses that we've experienced, we wouldn't have our daughter.
yeah.
And that's not a world I'm prepared to think about or picture. So I guess in some sense, I have to be, hard as it is, grateful that everything has turned out as it has. And one of the hardest parts of it all was not being able to fix things for the three that we lost.
Yeah.
It's a very paternal desire, and I think maternal desire as well, to want to make things right for your children. And the fact that I couldn't do anything to
Mm,
help them or even comfort them, that's something that I've wrestled with a whole lot. But that's equally what gives me my strength.
mhm.
That's what gives me the resolve and the patience and all the other things I need to be the best dad that I can possibly be. Um, and so I'm very grateful for the the three that we had, even if it was just for a matter of weeks. They'll never know it, and they'll never know anything. But I hope they've made me a better dad, and yeah, a better person as well.
Yeah. What's something last question. What's something you're proud of?
My daughter.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely. I'm proud of absolutely every fiber of her. She is just an incredible little person. She makes us laugh, smile. She can be so infuriating at times as well. I love all her little idiosyncrasies, but I'm just so incredibly proud of the little person that she is and the incredible girl that she's grown up to be. I always wanted to be a parent. I always wanted to be a dad. I never knew it could be this good, and that's credit to her. So she makes me proud every day. She doesn't. It's ridiculous. She doesn't even have to try. She just makes me proud.
She just has to be there.
Yeah, it just has to be herself.
Yeah.
She just has to. She just has to keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Well, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're so well spoken, and it's considering the difficult topics. It's been what's the word? Almost like beautiful is definitely the wrong word, but it's just so yeah. Just I've just been sitting here in silence, just listening to you. Just you describe it
Thank
so
you.
so nicely, and it's obviously an extremely difficult situation that you've gone through and are to some extent still dealing with. And so for you to be able to sit here and, be this open about it is brave, but it's also, it takes a lot. And so I really appreciate it. And I'm sure a lot of other people will be listening and will really appreciate you opening up as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's very kind of you, and as I say, I'm just so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. I think it's incredible that you're shining a light on mental health, on men's mental health in particular as well, and having these really important discussions. Talking always helps, I find.
Yeah.
And this has been, yeah, as I say, it's been really, really cathartic. So thank you.